I think one of the things that I wanted to start with was I was just curious, how did you end up in this? Like working for Vispero, maybe how it led into getting into kiosk technology, because I know it didn't start there.
No, so it's interesting. So I've worked in accessibility 30 years. Okay, so early on in my career, it was training and installing and configuring and stuff like everybody does, right? And then eventually, you know, get into joining what was originally Freedom Scientific and became Vispero as we acquired companies. And Freedom Scientific is the makers of JAWS for Windows, which is the original screen reader that blind people use to access Windows. You know, so at some point, you know, we're getting calls from customers and they're saying, you know, we need to make our kiosks accessible so that blind people can use them. And it was, you know, it's strange. I think the first project was like a prison in California.
Makes sense.
And the reason is that, you know, obviously if it's covered by government, which, you know, prisons fall into government, then they have requirements for accessibility.
Well, and there's a lot of litigious scenarios within the prison system, right? So
yeah, and so
people sitting around, nothing better to do, they're going to sue over.
But they wanted the reason for it was that they had kiosks that people could apply for jobs. In terms of as they're leaving prison, they need to apply for jobs to get their work, you know, permits and stuff like that.
Right.
And I'm paraphrasing whatever the actual task of the kiosk was, but so they needed something because they had, you know, blind prisoners like you have blind people everywhere. And so that was the first job, and our project manager for that and engineer is now the head of software. So, you know, he's done really well for himself in the last, you know, 5 to 8 years that we've been doing it. And so we knew we had a product that was totally user-friendly, very customizable, that we could make a good user experience for somebody at a kiosk. We also knew that we had to work with partners like Olea, like Storm, and some others to bring the complete picture together.
Right.
You know, because a lot of people will just slap a keypad on the front and call it a day.
Right. I've done what I need to do.
I am compliant in the view of everybody, because, you know, there's this weird circle or weird concept that, and part of this is how old things like the ADA are, right?
Right.
The ADA is very specific about a time period in 1992.
Right.
And so, unfortunately, what happens is you have this you know, not keeping up with technology problem. And, you know, they thought of everything as a piece of hardware, as a building, as a structure.
Right.
Never as, can somebody actually use this thing?
Right.
And they didn't think about it from that perspective. And you know, later you saw, you know, the Air Carrier Access Act. I think I'm getting that right. ACAA, which basically said websites, mobile apps, anything that the airline's providing must be accessible, which included their kiosks. And so that's why you'll see devices on the different kiosks in airports, is because of that rule. And again, they had to make it functionally accessible, which then says, can I perform the task on this device? Now, what I love the most about it is that, you know, you could simplify it and just call it kiosk, but let's just call it closed devices.
Right.
In a more generic term, because you could be doing a payment system, you could do something like a Peloton bike. You know, that's a kiosk on that in a way. It's an Android tablet, but I mean, it's no different than one. It's a lockdown device that's just running their application.
Yeah. No, I never even thought about that. So if somebody was blind or vision impaired, hearing impaired, and they bought a Peloton bike, that's mainly, its whole thing is the video, and I'm following, and I can hear, but maybe I can't actually navigate.
But maybe I can't
the user
go pick the video
to change the speed or pick the video.
Right. Or if you're deaf, is there captions on the video so that if a deaf person could see what's going on?
Right.
And so, and you know, you could you could also look at TVs on the back of seats in airplanes.
Yep.
You know, why can't I use that same device? So
yeah, how do I choose my movie? How do I change from movies to television or music?
Right, exactly. So, you know, our entire business is about making things accessible. So we've done things like making websites accessible, making mobile apps accessible.
Right.
And this is just another extension of that.
Right.
It just happens to be a closed device. And so the accessibility, which is more consulting, where we may tell someone how to make it accessible.
Okay.
Well, then over here we have this department called Freedom Scientific who made the software. Let's combine the concept and say, well, let's put that software on the unit that we're actually working with the customer to test it. And then once it's testable and works and ready for the field, they deploy it. And you know, it's in tens of thousands of units now.
Right.
You know, in the United States and a couple places around the world. And so from our perspective, it's done really well. And we, you know, in 2 years ago, we added the Android version, which was, you know, a big step to this too, because as you know, an Android tablet is probably cheaper than a Windows device.
Yeah, just a little bit.
Yeah, and I would say, and you probably agree with this, that those are probably our best two markets. I mean, Linux is still there.
Right.
You know, we'll look at that and see if it's a reason to do it. But you know, iOS is really not, Apple's really not an easy system for us to make better and more accessible. So,
right.
And it's probably, I would say, the lowest volume would be in Apple devices today.
Yeah, I would agree. I mean,
you're still getting Android and Windows, but
I still see mostly Windows, but definitely Android coming up in the world. It's a little harder to have more devices on an Android device.
That's the challenge.
Right.
You know, we were struggling with some Android devices. You can't manage audio well.
Oh, okay.
And so you have a speaker in the Android device.
Right, but now I want to plug a headphone and
now I want to put in the Storm device, which is an audio device. But if you put that in a hub, and then you have another screen up top that has a audio. Android doesn't allow you to like manage audio today like Windows. And these are things that people should be thinking about when picking their operating system. It's a little more complex than just say, oh, I must have Android because it's cheaper licensing.
Right.
And I think that's what a lot of people start with.
Oh, that's the bulk of it. Yeah.
Yeah. But that whole concept of controlling or being able to manage devices, Windows is way better at it, in my opinion, than Android today.
Yeah. Well, and as you start adding components to the kiosk, I mean, that's why I think we see Android mainly in QSR. I mean, it's bleeding over into some other areas, but mainly that because it's a payment device and a printer. So it's
still extra ports.
Oh yeah,
and that's one more there's one more failure port.
2 ports, you know, max.
Yeah. And then the question is, are the devices USB, USB-C, mini USB? I mean, there's all these kinds of ports you could choose from today.
Uh-huh.
And some of those Android devices just don't. I don't need one more failure point.
Right.
Right. And it's still, I don't know. I still believe that it's a higher risk point than say Windows today.
Yeah. Well, case in point, my Apple phone. You know, we couldn't get the speaker or the microphones working because because my new phone has USB-C
so
and my old microphone is Lightning.
So you got the new.
I got the new phone.
Yeah.
USB-C, which is great.
Yeah.
Don't get me wrong, but now all my Lightning stuff is not compatible, and so.
So you'll be selling that on eBay.
Yeah. For sale soon, right?
Yeah.
Look up
exactly.
my eBay account.
Yeah. So I don't know. I think there's right now in the United States, the estimate is around 1 out of every 4 people in the United States has some form of a disability.
1 out of every, okay.
Yeah.
So that's 25%?
Yep.
Okay.
And a lot of times we think of people with disabilities as blind. You see a cane, you know I'm blind.
Right. Or I think on my end, like unfortunately, you know, my naivety of the situation was always in designing a kiosk, it was somebody's in a wheelchair.
So you had to have it a certain height.
Yeah. I mean, and that was like the main focus. And I think for years it was, everybody would say, yeah, my kiosk is ADA compliant, right? Meaning
that's
we
the hardware
designed
side.
everything before, but below and above, you know,
Yeah.
these imaginary lines, and that was
Yeah.
it. And you know, I'm embarrassed to say we did a kiosk probably late 90s, maybe very early 2000s, that we did for LA City, that literally was on the campus for the blind and vision impaired in Los Angeles. And I remember they came to us and they asked us to put Braille stickers on the keyboard to make the keyboard accessible. And as I think back on that, what the hell were they going to do with the keyboard if they didn't know where they were typing and what they were being asked to type?
Right, did it work? What is the field? Is the field that you're typing in first name, last name?
Yeah, and if you have no idea, like, yeah, okay, I can feel the keyboard. What do I type?
Yeah.
You know?
Well, and if, you know, I think that going back to your original thing, which is that most people assume ADA was mostly about physical.
Yes.
Right? Because it was about the buildings. Are the doors wide enough for a wheelchair? Is the drinking fountain the right height? Is the bathroom accessible?
Right.
Obviously, there's more to that.
Yeah,
there's more than that.
It's very, I always call it architectural guidelines.
Right, exactly. Well, disabilities are very broad today, from, again, someone in a wheelchair or some physical disability, blind, you can see a cane, you know I have a problem seeing eye dog, things like that. Deaf and hard of hearing.
Right.
Now, in most kiosk situations, it probably doesn't affect that much unless you have videos.
Right.
Because then you need to have captions for those videos.
Right.
But the physical side of walking up and using an application to do something, but if you have an alert that's an audio alert, you need to figure out how do I give that alert visually. Okay?
Right.
But there's an entire category of, you know, other disabilities, neurodiverse. You could think of things like reading disabilities, dyslexia, you know, all this stuff that are a huge part of this population that
Big time.
And you don't even think about it because they're invisible.
Right.
You don't know that somebody has a reading disability.
Right.
Okay. And so how do you turn around and make that a usable experience for somebody? And that's why a lot of people focus on compliance. I want to focus on the user experience. And I think if we give a good user experience, you'll cover the compliance side.
Oh, 100%. Yeah, definitely. I mean, it's just like business, right? If you focus on good products and filling a need in society versus just trying to go out and make money, right? If you're just trying to go out and make money, you're going to fail every time.
Sure.
You know, like it's all about solving a need. Yeah, we've been looking at. I mean, we're redesigning a healthcare check-in kiosk that we offer right now, and you know, the majority of what I'm able to do as a manufacturer really is about architectural. You know, what's the layout, what's the height, does the kiosk adjust, you know, are we making it easy to approach, easy to find the components on the kiosk, but we do have conversation with our clients, right? You know, asking, what is it that you're trying to do as far as ADA is concerned? You know, we just did a custom project for a very well-known healthcare provider on the East Coast, where, you know, they wanted the monitor to tilt because you're taking a picture of the individual using a camera built into the monitor.
Yep. And they may be at a lower
and they could be lower, and so the kiosk is at a lower height, so that it's okay there, but now, you know, I go up at 6'2", and camera's got to point up at me, and so, you know, but we started getting into these a little bit more obscure ADA guidelines about, you know, it can't take more than 5 pounds of pressure to push something, and it shouldn't require a grasp, and so we really got in pretty heavy on how are we counterbalancing this monitor so it's 5 pounds up, 5 pounds down. You know, how are we making sure that it moves proper, that it's visible, you know, and obvious that you can move the monitor. And some of those things, like, were really challenging, and I think you go back to the customer and, you know, you're trying to work that out with them, is how far do you go?
And I think this is an area where another investigation, because again, you're not building the app, right? So you're building the hardware,
right? So they could totally blow it on the app,
right? But on the other part of this is like, I'm going to call them input devices for a second. So an input device to most kiosks is the screen.
Yep.
You touch the screen to do a function on the screen. You may type on the screen, you may choose, different features, you may hit submit, whatever. If that solution requires a certain level of typing, should we be using a keyboard rather than the Storm Audio Nav, which is probably the most popular input device today?
Right.
And I say that because I'm if I had to type my name's only 8 characters.
Yep.
Not that hard. Now you start adding, you have to do your full name, including middle. All of a sudden I'm adding a lot more characters, right? That takes a lot of time on a touch screen that is fundamentally, if I take my iPhone, my real estate's only this big.
Right.
So for me to move through a touch screen on my iPhone is nothing. But you now spread it out to being this wide.
Yep.
And the characters are bigger, and it takes more time for a blind person to navigate through that. And so should we be using a real QWERTY keyboard on that kiosk? Then you have to start thinking, and I've looked at lots of these QWERTY keyboards that are supposed to be on kiosks today. One entire keyboard, all of their special characters were in weird spots.
Right.
You can't do that. I'm blind. I don't.
They need to be where
all
they are
keys
supposed
should
to
be where keys should be.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
Enter keys should not be bottom left of the keyboard. That's control.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So don't move things around on me, because guess what? I'm not going to find them.
Right. Agreed. We actually, believe it or not, I don't know if I could say the name of the company, so I won't, but it's a very large healthcare software provider. Let's call them that. We had a conversation about launching kind of more their more ADA accessible version of their software, and the Storm device is on there, but they said that they're strongly recommending a keyboard. And so in that new design that we're doing, we are putting a keyboard on it, which is kind of wild to me, because in the beginning, in the 90s, early 2000s, keyboard trackball was on pretty much every kiosk, because you didn't have multi-touch, and the touch wasn't that great.
The touch was very bad back then.
Yeah, so you had those, but everybody was always trying to drive down the cost of the keyboard.
Yep. Now
here it comes back, into this specific market, at least in the beginning.
Yep.
We'll see if it expands.
What I think you'd have to, I'll have to share the keyboard with you at some point that we helped redesign with them, with Storm, because again, their keys were all over the place.
Right. Well, that's something I'm going to want to look at, because they're a vendor I'm definitely looking at.
But the challenge is they are costly.
Yeah.
Because they can pour water on them, and they're, all of that kind of stuff that could happen. Right?
Well, and everybody remembers all the sales reasons from back in the day, right? About
you don't want a keyboard.
I can beat this with a hammer. I can pour water on it. I can,
But if you just grab the keyboard from XYZ, store,
right,
and you just stuck it on there, it's not going to last a day.
No.
Right. So you have to have, with all the durability that you need inside your kiosk, obviously, and then safety and cleanliness, and can you clean it, all these factors that we have to realize today, they add cost too.
Yep.
Right. Being able to pour water on something isn't that easy to think about.
Right.
Not that water is the thing you want to do, but or putting certain chemicals on it to clean it.
Right.
There's certain things you probably don't want to do that on, and so these are factors, and a lot of times people care about the cost, but they're also need to realize the level of risk if they don't figure out these kind of issues.
Well, and so speaking of risk, let's go there. I think recently and over the years, we've all seen lawsuits where companies have decided maybe to not be as compliant for ADA as they can, right? They've done height and reach, but maybe not have bothered with vision impairment. And so there's, I think Quest was a recent one that there was.
Quest and LabCorp, yeah, both, and in both cases they are pretty significant when you think about that. These are pretty much the only two places in America where you can have this stuff done. I mean, think about it. You go to the doctor, where do they send you?
To the lab. And what's the lab?
And what are the two labs?
Right.
LabCorp and Quest.
Right.
So this is a perfect example of where an iPad was a bad use case.
Is that what, I didn't even realize that's what it ended up with. So iPad, no accessibility device.
There's accessibility in an iPad, but the way they implement it is not accessible. And it's also, they used the argument that it costs too much to fix the problem. Now, I understand there's cost associated to it.
Sure.
Okay. But how long's an iPad going to last in the field anyway?
Right.
Compared to something else.
Right.
It's not made to just be plugged in 24/7.
No, you get battery swell
and
all kinds of crap people don't realize.
Right. I mean, it's just, I'm not saying they're bad products because I use them every day.
Same.
But there's a different use case for them. And I'm not going to, again, tell you that you can't use an iPad for a kiosk. You see it, several other businesses doing it today. But in this case, the scenarios and the way they developed it, they're not giving the proper accessibility. So
when they say it's too much, are they trying to hide behind the idea of reasonable effort?
Yeah,
for
pretty
ADA?
much. Yeah,
I mean,
they're
that's
basically
what they say, right? Is like
it's the, I think I'm going to struggle with the right term, but basically it's cost prohibitive.
Right.
Right. Yes, we should have been made accessible. Yes, you could. I'm sure they didn't want to be slapped with an ADA complaint.
Right.
And the judge agreed on it that it was, but they're also trying to say, but I can't do it. Now, where I struggle is like, what do you mean? You're not going to build more units? You're not going to build new units? Why don't you start fresh and get something clean?
Right.
So.
Right.
And I would, those two are perfect examples of where the challenges of accessibility needs to be pointed out. People say all the time, you could always get help.
Right.
But with using ride-shared services today, like Uber and Lyft, if I want to go to the doctor's appointment by myself, I can. I don't need to have my wife take me. It's cheap enough for me to go. It's $8 to get to the doctor.
Right.
I could go into LabCorp, do everything I need to do, and walk out. Challenge is when you walk into one of their lobbies, nobody's in there.
So now you're stuck.
And you're waiting for your appointment. Nobody comes and checks on you because you never used the kiosk. You didn't even know. Now they're running videos and they're trying to do all the other reasons why this works. But let's think about the self-checkout today. Why isn't that accessible?
Right, and it's everywhere.
And it's 3 or 4 companies mostly, right? And self-checkout.
Agreed.
And they in theory need to put some stuff in it for ADA, but I would question how much that actually meets because the screen's not always in front of the scanner. So sometimes it's back behind the scanner.
Yep.
So you're having to reach over it to reach the screen.
Yeah.
Is that even accessible?
Right, yeah, the depth of it and everything. Yeah, well, I've looked at quite a few of them and thought, if it is, they're at the hairy edge.
Oh, right. But they're just, no one's checking it, right?
Or
Which
that.
is, yeah.
Or that.
And, but why can't I do that same thing like everybody else is my question. And somebody says, well, just go to the regular checkout. Well, now I have to wait in line when nobody else does.
Well, and
why should that be fair?
So we talk about that with customers. I've had countless number of customers and proudly say, well, no, on the kiosk there's a receptionist is there to help them, and my response to them is, okay, great. I'm glad that you're enthusiastic about your receptionist being willing to help. That's fantastic. That's the way they should be. However, if you put the kiosk out for me to come in and use it, let's say there's a line at the reception desk and I decide I'm using the kiosk, that if you can't use it, they've discriminated against you. And no matter how helpful and how wonderfully nice the receptionist is, that kiosk has kept you from being able to use it, and then that falls into the discrimination against the blind or however those lawsuits start to come about.
But it's also privacy. Like if I'm in a healthcare place, I'd like to put in my own info.
Yeah.
Do I want to speak my social security number out loud at social security offices?
Probably not.
Probably not, right? And so their kiosks are accessible. Do I, would I mind going to the counter to order food at a QSR? No. But there's actually QSRs today that have no counter service.
Right.
You have to use a kiosk.
Right.
So am I supposed to wait until somebody comes out of the kitchen to actually get me something? There's actually a coffee shop in UCLA area.
Okay.
I'm not going to name a brand for the moment, but why pick on a brand? A coffee shop. I walk in, kiosk on the counter, no input device, so I cannot plug in headphones. I can't touch the screen, have it talk, nothing. The person behind the counter is only one person. They're filling orders.
Right. They're busy.
They're busy. They don't have the time to come around and use the kiosk. Now, somebody would argue, why don't you just use your phone to order? Then I have to actually set up the phone, the app, whatever. But what happens if I don't have my phone that day? Or my phone's dead? I laughed, not laughed, because it was a major day and a kind of a challenging day for everybody for about 5 hours. You guys woke up later than we did, because I'm on the East Coast. But when AT&T's internet went down.
That shutdown,
yeah,
right? Okay.
The airports were insane. Because think about it, an entire group of people had planned to check into their flight and pull up their reservation on their phone.
Done.
Got to the airport and couldn't do it. So what did they have to go use?
Kiosks.
They
or
all
the
had
desk.
to use the kiosk.
Right.
Or stand in line for the desk. So that was a proof of what happens when you don't have a phone.
Right.
And, all those people who said I'd never use a kiosk all did. Because they had no
and we're
choice.
glad that it was there because they saw the line at the reception.
Yeah. Well, I think of hotels as a perfect example of why I want a kiosk. I get to the hotel last night.
Okay.
There's 10 people in line.
You know what you want.
One person behind the counter.
Right.
Okay. I have mobile check-in, but for some reason they want me to go there, verify that it's me before I can use my key on my phone.
Nice.
They've taken away the entire process.
Pointless.
Right?
Pointless, yeah.
And so I would like to go up to a kiosk, check in, have it spit out my key. If I need a replacement key, I want to go up to the machine and do it.
Right, identify myself and be done.
Exactly, because there's an entire lobby full of people. This is a conference with, 4,000 people.
Right.
Why would you want to stand in line at the front desk?
Right.
I want to go back to the iPads for a second.
Okay.
And there's the QSR out there who put an iPad in. And again, if you do it right, you can make the iPad accessible. They chose to enable all of the accessibility features on the iPad with one click of a button on the iPad. These are the old iPads with a home button on the front.
Oh, okay, got it.
So you could, in the Apple world, you can triple tap that button to start your accessibility feature.
Okay.
Well, the problem is it brings up all the features because they turned them all on. So a blind person cannot hit the button on the screen that says screen reader.
Oh.
They have to, in Braille, in front of the kiosk, it says, if you need assistance, go to the counter to get assistance, to turn on the screen reader. Well, if I've already gone to the counter to get them to help me, why am I going back to the kiosk to use it?
I always wonder what the Braille says.
It's different in all cases, right?
Sure. But I always wonder when I see Braille, like, is it actually helping you, or is it just pointing you somewhere else?
Well, a lot of times it's saying insert headphones here. Well, no kidding, there's a headphone jack.
Okay.
Like, I don't need that.
Right.
Right? In an ATM, there's a bunch of Braille. And you're sitting there going, but the Braille, just like those, you talked about a keyboard a little while ago, about how you had to put Braille stickers on every key.
This is just telling you where things are located on the machine. Yeah.
But it doesn't tell you how to operate it once you plug in your headphones. You have to listen to the menus. You have to hear the choices, right? And so, but there's, and there's good Braille and there's bad Braille, right? It's true. I mean, people should be looking at the rules. Now, California, shockingly, has different rules for Braille on kiosks than the rest of the country.
Go figure.
So just start with California and do it right, and then you'll be okay everywhere else.
Well, it's like smog on cars, right? If it passes here, you're good.
Well, I mean, when we did a project here in California, we had to do 13 different voices because
the language.
Because they needed this 13 different languages for the screen readers. So, again, our only job in this is to make it accessible. So we make it talk.
Right.
If you see a headphone jack, you should be able to plug in a 3.5 millimeter jack into those headphones into the jack.
Right.
Now, somebody's going to ask us tomorrow, why can't you do Bluetooth? What do you think? What's the answer to that?
Oh my God, it would be a nightmare.
Well, because you'd have to go up and pair every time. If you can't hear it, right? If at this point it's not talking until you plug in headphones, you can't pair it, right?
Well, and if you've paired to it and it's at a train station, it's the ticketing kiosk, and tomorrow I come back to the train station.
Is it still connected?
Yeah, am I going to pair to it again instantly? Like maybe I don't want to do that.
I'm doing a presentation about good and bad experiences on kiosks, and there's a train one actually that's by my house, and in Braille it says insert headphones to get audio. There's a headphone jack.
Okay.
Plug in headphones, nothing happens.
Nice. Nothing.
On the screen, somebody comes up and says, all you have to do is tap the bottom corner screen and make it talk. It says it on the screen. Tap here for audio.
But it doesn't actually.
It talks to a speaker. No.
Oh, it talks to a speaker.
So the headphones aren't even needed, and nor is the Braille that tells me to insert the headphones.
Oh my goodness.
And so that's a bad user experience. Was the kiosk accessible once I started using it? Totally accessible.
Just that little
bad,
screw up.
Just bad communication. They put Braille on it, told you to plug in headphones. Headphones do nothing. All they had to do is say, tap the bottom corner of the screen or tap here in Braille. Something like that.
Right, yeah. Well, and that was the purpose of the headphone, right?
Yeah.
It's like all audio should move from the speaker into the audio jack, period.
I saw that. I constantly see headphone jacks with nothing happening.
Oh, I believe it.
And I was Orlando Airport. They have common use kiosks for airlines.
Right.
You've probably seen these around.
Yep.
So it's not one airline. It's not United, American, Delta.
Right.
Southwest.
The airport themselves
owns
them, put them out, and then everybody's on it.
Yep.
Yeah.
Totally didn't talk. Plugged in headphones, nothing happened. Another one that was common use, plugged in headphones, it talked, allowed me to go through the entire process of picking the airline, but once you got to the airline section, didn't talk.
Nice.
So
so just led you down a dead end.
Yeah, and you wasted an entire process of doing this, right?
Right.
Like, I did something similar recently where you've seen the machines where you can make your key.
Yes.
Like at a hardware store.
Yep.
Went through the entire process, but the actual submit button at the last screen to pay was not accessible, so you couldn't get to it.
I've seen other companies now where they're doing payment, but payment actually pops up in a separate window.
Or a separate device.
Yeah, that's like the payment company or whatever. Yeah. And so all the ADA just fell apart at that point because you can't screen read or whatever, something that isn't a totally different app that's overlaid.
Yeah. Well, that's why I think the future of tap and go, whatever the term is, where you can just tap your phone, tap your credit card. I mean, who wants to insert their card anymore?
Yeah,
because you get scammed.
I use it all the time. Yeah,
I mean, it's so much easier. Every kiosk in the future should be tap. Right.
Agreed.
Either your phone or a credit card.
Right.
And we shouldn't be putting cards in anymore because this is the high risk we have. I mean, we used a gas pump in Colorado and we got scammed. Because they put somebody put the some kind of card catcher on the card reader.
Scanning it, it surprises me even today. We answered an RFP a week ago. I won't say who. I won't even say the industry because it's such a big name that everybody knows.
Yeah,
was shocking, like the way they were trying to get around ADA in the RFP, like that. They're not concerned. No sort of screen reader, no sort of storm device. The only concern they had was height, period. Because the company has old software that they're repurposing onto new hardware. Not even going to bother to go back to the software organization, make any sort of change. Now, when we answered the RFP, we put in, hey, think you're making a mistake here. You really need to look at this, and you should look at these things. But they didn't care. Or even think about the video that I sent you a couple weeks ago from
a QSR.
Yeah. That's, again,
that used to have accessibility.
They used to have accessibility on their kiosk.
I actually thought it was a bad user experience in their previous one, by the way. I'm not talking the hardware.
Right.
I'm talking the screen reader.
But the new version of the kiosk,
they took it all away.
Have it.
Took it all away, and it's a major change.
That blew my mind. That's why I videoed it and sent it to you, because I was just like, I cannot believe this organization went backwards and removed the ADA device.
And I know you're mostly focused on the hardware side, but I'll tell you, I'm shocked when people try to just put a website on their kiosk.
Oh yeah.
And it's not a good user experience.
Right.
Your website, unless it's designed specifically for a kiosk or for a mobile device, and you have to go test and feel this out. Drop downs are not a good user experience on a kiosk.
Right.
Let's think about it, because you have to scroll. If you do a bunch of scrolling, how good is that experience?
Yeah.
Like try to pick your state by a drop down.
Right.
It's painful.
Right.
I'm in Virginia. I'm at the end.
Some websites, I even just with my mouse, I highlight and the drop down happens. I go to select something and it pops back up. Right. It leaves, and
right.
I'm thinking, yeah, with the touch screen, it just wouldn't work. Period.
No. And this is why looking at the user experience is so critical, because you need to understand the total user experience. You need to understand that there's a broader audience than just, what you think you have every day. I had this experience, and this is back in the 90s, pre me dealing with kiosk stuff. A company was making something called talking signs.
Okay.
And all it was a box that would go up on near a sign or a place.
Okay.
That would broadcast on infrared an audio.
Oh, okay. So
stream.
Basically, like a proximity detector, and it starts talking.
And then you held a box the size of a deck of cards with a speaker on it, and you hold a button down, and if you go like this, eventually it finds one of those signs and it says whatever that sign is.
Oh, okay.
Okay.
So maybe like a museum or somebody would use that.
Yeah. Shopping mall, find restrooms, find stores, whatever. Baseball stadium, find the aisles, find the restrooms, find food vendors, whatever. These are concepts, right? I went to a baseball stadium. I said, blind people don't go here. They don't go to baseball stadiums. Now, you know as well as I do, I go to baseball games.
Right.
Okay? And so I'm saying, you can't make these general assumptions that we don't do things.
Right.
Right? Like, and then somebody
if
would
they're
say,
here watching the game, they're in the wrong place.
Well, I did a post the other day on LinkedIn, and you responded to it, and people do ask, I mean, seriously, they say, how can you do anything? Wouldn't you go to the store only with your wife? No.
Yeah.
My wife actually sends me to the store for things.
Right.
Okay?
Right.
I can't drive there. I may take an Uber. It's only a mile away. I may walk. And they're like, whoa, you walk a mile? I mean, blind people can walk. Yes, we can walk a mile. I mean, people assume that because we're blind, there's things we can't do. There's a few things I can't do.
Sure.
I can't drive. Just straight up.
Right.
Last time I drove, not a good experience. Not gonna fly a plane. Just gonna be straight up.
Right.
But there's a lot of things that blind people can do. There's blind people working in warehouses today.
Right.
Stocking shelves. That's physical labor, and you're sitting here going, how do they read things to stock shelves? There's all kinds of great technology out there that we use today.
Right.
And the AI technology that we're being offered today to read things is amazing.
Oh, it's gonna become amazing.
I take a picture of my backyard the other day because my family was out of town. I wanted to see which area the dog was in because he was being quiet. Took a picture of the right, it described it, and then I asked a question to the picture. I said, is there a dog in the picture? It says no. Fine, I took a picture of the other side of it described it. It described having the dog up against the fence.
So now you know the dog.
The dog's out in the yard. He's not left the yard, not escaped, nothing. But the AI's doing this for me.
Well,
right?
I've noticed on my iPhone actually that once in a while we have this group chat that's the family group
Yeah.
chat, right? All my
Yeah.
kids. And I was in the car and I have Apple CarPlay and I was playing the, what the kids were saying. And then it described to me a picture.
That's awesome.
And I didn't even realize my phone had the capability, but it was like, and there is a picture attached to this text message and described the photo to me.
How cool is that?
I felt I saw the picture, but I was driving. Like, it was amazing. I was thinking, oh my God, this is so cool.
I used AI the other day because I was buying something on Amazon and I just wanted this speaker. I needed a new Bluetooth speaker, but I needed one with a line-in jack, the old 3.5 millimeter jack.
Right.
For the purposes of plugging it into a kiosk. I needed to be able to do that for simulating sound without giving people headphones.
Yeah, right. Because people don't want to use headphones at a
shared
show.
Headphones. Yeah. And I knew the speaker used to have it, but in the description from Amazon, I don't blame Amazon. It's because somebody else fills out the form. Doesn't say that they have that 3.5 millimeter jack. I sent the picture to the AI tool, and it came back and told me there's a 3.5 millimeter line-in jack.
Nice. It identified it on the photo.
Yeah.
That's incredible.
Yeah.
So I'm curious then on, and you don't have to name one of my kiosks because I'm sure it's not, but name a project that you think maybe that's deployed now, not coming, but out now that has done a very good job at being accessible. Because I think we all need to reference something that is done right.
I think Social Security has done an amazing job in their facilities. I think the one from McDonald's today is really good. And both not just from all the other ADA stuff, but the actual user experience. You sit back and you say those, and I'll go to a couple others, but you sit back and say, okay, so tell me, like, what is the goal of the product, and can somebody perform the task in a reasonable time? That's what we really want to solve for.
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
And so I sit back and say, if I could put somebody in front of a McDonald's kiosk and they can process an order in a couple minutes their first time, that's pretty impressive.
Yeah, I would call it a success.
Yeah, if you know what you want and you came for the double cheeseburger, and you know what it sounds like to get to that. You get to burgers and you choose it, and you choose beef, and then you choose double cheeseburger. It's going to ask you, do you want fries with that?
Right.
All the upsells are going to be there.
Oh yeah.
That's just what kiosks are made for.
Yeah.
And you get all the way through that process, and you could do that in 2-3 minutes for your first time. The next time you're going to do it in a minute.
Oddly,
think about it.
So the McDonald's kiosk, and forgive me if anybody from McDonald's watches this, and I'm not saying it not because we did not build their kiosks, right? This isn't just sour grapes. The first time I used it, I hated their user interface, and I really didn't like it.
Well, that's software, right? And I get it. I don't make that software.
I couldn't, I literally couldn't figure out how to place an order for, I can't remember if I was trying to buy a combo or if I was just trying to get the sandwich from a combo, but something about it rubbed me the wrong way. But as a kiosk guy, every time I go into a McDonald's, I use the kiosk, and the last couple of times it's gotten a little easier for me. But it's just funny that you would say, from an ADA perspective, that one's great, because my initial work with it was like, God, I hate this thing.
Well, I would say that, if you look at statistics in user satisfaction of these types of devices, not McDonald's, but just in general, statistics probably tell you that most people don't want to go up to them.
Right.
Okay.
Right.
We read the reports all the time about self-checkout and how many people don't want to do it, right? Mm-hmm. Partially because they're like, there's a person right there. Why aren't they helping me, right?
Right.
But I think that those are two good examples. We did the Higgy one is pretty good. If you've not tried that, this is one where you can check your blood pressure at like a grocery store or a pharmacy. You sit down in it. But with any kiosk, they roll out over time. So you may have a couple places that have it, and it takes a while to get to your region. You know how it works for deployments. It's not quick and easy.
Right.
We started doing ones with the Pokemon vending machines.
Okay.
And so these are where you can buy your Pokemon cards. That was a very successful one. Very excited about that. It's just launched here in January, so it's being deployed right now.
We'll have to tell Daniel about that. Daniel's a huge Pokemon fan.
Oh no! You just have to be careful. I'll be honest.
Okay.
Some of these cards are expensive.
Yeah, they are.
Okay.
Oh yeah.
And so you better just watch out if your kid's gonna go do it, right? So.
Well, Daniel's the head
I know,
of sales here.
I know,
LA,
but
right?
I mean,
that's up to
but
him.
right, but he can afford it.
He's on his own.
Yeah, he's on his own. You're
I'm
not paying.
I'm not buying
for it.
him Pokemon cards anymore.
Right. But like, I think it's great. There's this.
So this thing, I'm assuming it's really describing the card to you.
It has to.
I mean because I mean just to tell me it's a Charizard or something is not enough, because there's clearly a huge cost spread between your average card and something that's
clearly
probably very
these
collectible.
cards. You know these cards.
Well, I was a baseball card collector as a kid, so
yeah.
I definitely understand the premise.
I have to ask you, this may not be part of your video, but
All good.
did you ever read the Wax Pack?
No.
Great baseball book.
Okay.
The guy, a kid in 1980s, mid 80s, and he is collecting baseball cards, and not all of you don't open them all.
Right. Yeah. Some of them you just keep wrapped up and that's it.
30 years later, he opens them, and he drives across America to meet the 10 to 15 players' baseball cards.
Oh, cool.
To meet the players and talk to them.
Nice.
And I just thought it's actually just an unbelievable. He drives 11,000 miles.
Whew.
To interview like 10 to 15 people.
Okay.
And it was great. Each chapter is a different player.
Yeah, there's that whole unopened box of cards are worth a certain amount of money, but now if you open it and you get crap out of it, that box is not worth anything. But if you find that really rare card, that box was worth a lot. There's whole videos dedicated to opening packs of Yu-Gi-Oh cards and stuff online, like Pokemon and all that stuff.
What's the new digital image?
NFT.
I mean, seriously.
That's never going to be like cards. Never.
But Trout's card NFT was worth a lot of money. I'm like, why?
Yeah.
It doesn't make sense to me. I'm sorry.
Never made sense to me.
You want something to hold, to say this is worth something. It's a piece. Now,
well, and then is the corner bent? Is it a perfect card? I mean, there's all that. Like digital that goes away.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, it's like for me, electric cars versus gas powered, right? Like, I love cars. It's gas for me all day, every day. You can't convince me that an electric car has a soul. They just, I don't know. I mean, they're good. They've got their place, but it's just not my thing. So hopefully California doesn't make me get rid of my gas powered cars someday.
My wife doesn't. My wife thinks it's and she's, she's for the environment, but doesn't feel that the batteries are going to be better for the environment than the gas.
At some point, probably not. I mean,
and I would actually prefer a hybrid. They kind of concern me just going straight electric. And
hybrid's cool. We've got our CTO drives hydrogen cars. He's on his third one.
Wow.
And he's pretty lucky because there's a hydrogen gas station around the block here from the office, and then one by his home. So
that worked out.
Both ends of his commute, he's covered.
And
it works well for him. And it's interesting. I follow him down the street after work, and I see the car basically urinating on the ground. It literally every couple of moments, it sprays a little water out of the bottom of the car because that's its byproduct when it's consuming the hydrogen is water.
That's funny.
So it's kind of neat. It's got its place.
You wouldn't drink that water, would you?
I don't think I would. I'm not gonna climb under his car anytime soon and try it. So more of a personal question. So you said ADA. You got into this 30 years ago.
Yeah.
Have you had your vision condition your whole life?
I've had it since I was 6. So and it's funny. My wife is still trying to figure out what I can see today.
Right, she's because you saw things before.
Well, no, it's just that I still have some vision, right? So there's this. A lot of people don't understand blindness because you think blindness is either you can't see or you can't see.
Right, you totally live.
There's nothing in
dark.
between.
Right.
But we all know that as we get older or some other conditions, we may lose some portion of our vision. And so mine was due to a condition called hydrocephalus. And so it's called water on the brain, and it cut off blood supply to the optic nerves. Okay. So in my left eye, I don't see anything, maybe a little hand motion I can see. In my right eye, it's 2600 tunnel vision. So I can see that you're there. It looks like you're wearing a blue shirt, like a light blue shirt.
Yep.
I know there's something next to you on the couch. I know it's my cane, but I would not be able to tell you it's my cane.
Other than you just know that it's
I know that it's there.
Right.
Like there's some objects that are obvious to me based on position. Like if I'm walking downstairs, I know that there would typically be a railing on one side. So I may not be able to see the stairs, but I would look for the railing because it may be more in my vision because the stairs are going down and I can't see them. Okay. So you look for objects and you try to use things that help you along the way. And so I lost my sight when I was 6. Nothing's changed since. My wife has finally learned that sight and right rhyme, so therefore I see out of my right eye.
Finally,
it's only 30 plus years, but she's figured it out.
Well, I have a friend. Oddly enough, we were in the backyard of my house, and everybody was sitting around, and we were having cocktails, and he's got pretty decent color blindness, right?
Yeah.
And he's my age, 48 years old.
Yep.
We're sitting there chatting, and I say something about a peanut butter and jelly sandwich, and I don't know why, but I say peanut butter being brown. And he looks at me with the most serious face, and he goes, "Wait, peanut butter is brown?" And I go, "Yeah, peanut butter's brown, you know?" And he's like, "I forgot that, for him, brown looks purple when he's looking at things." But apparently, in 48 years, nobody ever said anything about peanuts and peanut butter being brown, and he was shocked.
It's all context, yeah.
I mean, he was like very shocked. It was like his dog died. He's like, "Are you serious? Like, peanut butter is brown and peanuts are brown." And he kept coming back to it during the evening, saying like, "Are you messing with me?" And I just thought, man, he's gone 48 years, and just no context of it. Nobody ever said anything out loud that told him the color of peanut butter was brown.
And solving for color blindness is not hard.
No.
I mean, we have a free tool on tpgi.com called the Color Contrast Analyzer, CCA, and you can just run it on your app, and it'll tell you where you fall short on colors. And when you do, you just tweak it a little bit,
right, to create the contrast so the person can see, right?
Yeah,
because those of us that are not colorblind, when we look at those bubble tests and everything, we could see the number or the shape or whatever inside of the thing. So I mean, I can imagine they could lose entire text on screen or whatever just because those colors aren't contrasted enough.
Or people put text over images, and that's hard to read as well.
Oh geez, yeah. Looks nice to all the rest of us, but interesting. So we're about the hour.
Cool. Was this good?
This is good. I only just one more thing I want to throw out there. So Stevie Wonder.
Yeah.
That it still trips me out that
we went to dinner one night.
I go to your
open house,
open
right?
house.
Open house, yeah.
And he calls you from the parking lot, and you're basically telling him like, just get out of the car and come in, and he's obviously ready to come in the building, and you go, "No, I'm talking to Frank," and you and I were chatting, and I'm like, "Who was that?" And you tell me, "Oh, it's Stevie Wonder," and I'm going, okay, this guy's just got the name Stevie Wonder, like Matt's pulling my leg. and in the door walks Stevie Wonder to Vispero's offices for the open house. And later that evening, a group of us end up going out to dinner with Stevie Wonder, and I end up sitting at the table across from him, and we went to P.F. Chang's. Right, so it's family style dinner. I end up serving Stevie Wonder his food for dinner, and it blew my mind, that happened. I mean, it's like
it was a lot of fun.
Easily one of the craziest stories of my life so far, I would say.
Well,
he's just the customer for you.
No, he's a friend. I mean, he may buy our products, but it's more about he's a good guy, right?
Okay.
And I think a great role model for people to realize that, you know, blind people can live a good life, and he'll admit to anybody he has it good, you know.
Right.
I'll say I have it good. Like, me understanding the challenges around vision, I'm plus 50 years old.
Right.
I've lived with it my whole life. If you're 20 years old and lose your vision,
whew, could you imagine? Yeah.
Right. So let's say you're a warfighter for this country, and you lose your vision to a bomb blast.
Which happens all the time.
All of a sudden, your entire life is gone upside down. Not just because you lost your vision, but you've also lost everything that you planned your life around. You planned to be in the Army your whole life, and you've just lost your vision.
Right. So now you've lost your career on top of it.
Yeah. And it doesn't mean that you're stuck not doing anything, but there's an emotional life change that you have to go through, and it's not easy.
Right.
Okay, I used to drive. I used to read books. I used to use my phone normally. I used to watch TV normally. All that changes. Do blind people watch TV? Yeah.
Sure.
Totally, we watch TV.
Sure.
We use audio description. You turn on the feature in Netflix or any of those programs today, and it will describe what's on the show to you while it's happening. Not during the dialogue, but outside the dialogue. You know, it's almost like listening to an audiobook.
I've not tested that. We watch TV a lot with closed captioning
No,
on.
now add audio description once.
I'm going to try it.
Yeah, it's under language. It's
Okay.
under language. So you click language, then you click audio description, English. And it'll work in, you know, all the streaming platforms pretty much.
Right.
So highly recommend it. It's a good experience. And, you know, people who have sight will actually put it on like an audiobook and watch TV in their car while driving, even though they're not looking at it, because it's describing to them what's happening.
Ah, okay.
So if you put on Stranger Things, it's going to feel like you're listening to an audiobook with the dialogue.
Interesting.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to give it a shot. We do watch a lot of TV with closed captioning just because I think the older I get, the more my hearing is failing me, and the kids yell that I've got the TV too loud, right? So
there's a new feature in the streaming platforms called Audio Boost. And what it does is it boosts the dialogue audio and brings down the background audio.
Oh, and they could probably do that really well since it's all digital now.
Yeah.
Right? Yeah, a lot easier.
Yeah, it's in most of the streaming platforms today.
Now I'm learning things.
Yeah.
Nice. Okay.
Well, this has been great.
Yeah.
I enjoyed it.
I think this works. Thank you.